Growing up, my family never looked perfect from the outside, but to me it was everything. We didn't have much money, and sometimes the days felt heavy with worry or frustration. But love was always the thread that held us together. My father worked himself to the bone to give us a stable life, pouring his heart into every small moment. A family dinner, a backyard bonfire, a quiet ride to school. My mother, even with her storms and struggles, was a bright light when she laughed, when she remembered to hope. Looking back, I see now that our home was built not just on care, but on sacrifice, quiet, unnoticed sacrifices made day after day, year after year. There were cracks, of course, unspoken hurts, restless nights, and moments when it felt like we were all holding our breath, hoping the weight wouldn't crush us. But even so, there was warmth, real warmth. We were messy, flawed, and sometimes broken, but there was always a fierce kind of loyalty tying us together. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was ours, and for a long time, it was enough. The evening started like a dream, the kind of rare night when everything felt a little brighter, a little lighter, like life was finally letting us catch our breath. The grill sizzled under the weight of steaks and corn. Laughter danced through the warm air, and the adults leaned back in their chairs, beers in hand, trading old jokes and lazy stories. Even Mom, who usually carried the tension of a dozen worries on her back, seemed freer, her laughter sharp and beautiful under the stars. Music floated from the radio, mixing with the smell of wood smoke and grilled food, and for a while it felt like the world outside our ranch didn't exist. We were wrapped in a fragile kind of happiness, reckless, a little too loud but real. The drinks kept flowing, and somewhere along the way, the edges started to blur. Mom laughed a little too hard. Dad's watchful eyes grew a little too sharp. It was fun, but it was dangerous fun, like standing too close to a bonfire, pretending the flames wouldn't catch your clothes. As the night slipped deeper into itself, a strange current hummed beneath the good times, something electric, something waiting to spark. We didn't know it yet, but the foundation beneath us was already cracking. Hairline fractures splitting open in places we couldn't see. We were laughing at the edge of a cliff, and none of us realized we were already falling. It happened so fast, it almost felt like a trick of the wind. One small moment, a single careless word, and everything shifted. Mom, drunker than she should have been, leaned too close to Thomas and slurred something that made no sense at first. But then she laughed, tossing out a name like it meant nothing. Christian. It floated in the air, sharp and sour, cutting through the warmth of the night like a cold blade. I saw Dad stiffen instantly, the beer halfway to his mouth forgotten. His smile froze, and for a heartbeat he just stared at her, like he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. But deep down I think he knew. The way his fingers tightened around the bottle, the way his eyes darkened, he knew. That name didn't belong to our family. Didn't belong to this ranch, this life. It was a stranger's name, heavy with meaning we didn't understand yet. Around us, the night kept pretending to be normal, the grill crackling, the horses rustling in their stalls, the music still humming. But the spell had broken. A chill ran through the evening, a low rumble beneath our laughter, unnoticed by everyone except Dad. From that moment on, he wasn't laughing anymore. He wasn't celebrating. He was hunting for the truth, and nothing, not love, not loyalty, not even fear, was going to stand in his way. At first, Dad didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring into his drink like he was trying to drown whatever wildfire had started burning inside him. But silence was never going to be enough. It began with a question, low, almost casual, but it carried a sharpness that made everyone at the table shift uncomfortably. "Who the hell is Christian?" he asked, voice tight with barely bottled fury. Mom blinked, confused and sluggish from the alcohol, and shrugged like it was nothing. That was all it took. The calm shattered. Dad slammed his fist against the table, making the plates rattle and the dog bark from somewhere near the porch. His anger wasn't wild. Not yet. It was something colder, heavier, something obsessive. He wasn't just mad. He was driven, locked in, every muscle straining toward a single goal, to tear the truth out of her, no matter what it cost. His face twisted into something raw and desperate as he demanded answers she couldn't or wouldn't give. The air turned suffocating, thick with tension so sharp it made your skin crawl. He wasn't seeing us anymore. Not the kids. Not the family he had spent his life protecting. All he could see was betrayal, flashing like a neon sign behind Mom's tear-glossed eyes. We scrambled to intervene, hearts pounding, but the damage had already started. Love and rage blurred together inside him. And for the first time, I realized obsession doesn't save you. It burns everything to the ground. The night unraveled faster than any of us could hold it together. We were a mess of desperate voices, reaching out across the smoke and the wreckage, trying to stitch something back that had already torn wide open. My sister was crying, her hands trembling as she pleaded with Dad to stop, to sit down, to just breathe for 1 second. Thomas hovered nearby, tense and ready to jump in if things got worse. And me, I was shouting words I barely remembered later, anything to pull Dad's focus away from Mom, away from the anger that had swallowed him whole. Mom just sat there, her eyes glassy, her body limp in the chair, like she was already slipping away from us. It hurt in ways I couldn't explain. The sight of her so small, so distant, while the man who had once worshipped her now raged like a storm. Dad's shouts cracked the night open, every word soaked in betrayal and heartbreak. "I gave you everything," he roared, voice ragged. Wasn't it enough? It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about us too, about the way we would all carry this moment, etched deep into our bones. I could feel the divide splintering under our feet, a family once stitched together by love, now pulled apart by grief, pride, and secrets too painful to bury. No matter how much we begged or cried, none of us could stop the fall. We were already too far gone. By the time the flashing blue and red lights splashed across the windows, it was already too late. The house, once a place of warmth and noise and stubborn hope, felt like it had been hollowed out from the inside. It was a battlefield now. Broken chairs, spilled drinks, and a heavy, choking stench of fear clinging to every wall. Dad paced like a caged animal, his anger cooling into something more dangerous, a cold, restless kind of despair. Mom was nowhere near herself, slumped on the couch, her face hidden in her hands, her body trembling. When the officers arrived, they spoke in calm, rehearsed voices, but it felt like shouting against a hurricane. None of it could fix what had already cracked beyond repair. Grandma took over, ushering us into another room, answering questions with a voice that somehow stayed steady when the rest of us were crumbling. I caught glimpses of Dad and Mom as they spoke to the police. Two ghosts wearing the faces of the people I used to know. It was terrifying how quickly everything had fallen apart. Just hours ago, we had been laughing. Now we were standing on the jagged edge of something none of us could undo. I realized then, sometimes families don't break in an instant. They erode, like cliffs under stormy seas, piece by aching piece, until one final wave sends everything crashing into the abyss. The house was almost too quiet the next morning, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. We tried to go through the motions, feeding the horses, tidying up, pretending that everything wasn't hanging by a thread. But we all knew something had cracked open in the night, something too big to ignore. When the sharp sound of a gunshot shattered the silence, it was like the world simply stopped. I don't even remember running, just the sick, hollow dread blooming in my chest as I sprinted toward the noise. I didn't want to believe it. Even when I saw the officers pushing past us, even when I heard Grandma's voice break into something raw and unrecognizable. But reality is cruel. We found Mom in the bedroom, and it was a scene no heart should ever have to witness. She had slipped through our fingers completely, lost in a moment of unbearable despair. The grief hit like a physical blow, sudden, brutal, and cold. I stood there, rooted to the floor, wishing I could turn back time, wishing I could fix the things that broke. But some tragedies don't give you warnings, and they don't give you second chances. They just happen, and all you're left with is the wreckage. Somewhere deep inside, I knew that no matter what we did after this, none of us would ever be the same again. A part of us had died with her. In the days after Mom's death, grief didn't settle softly over us. It clawed and screamed and tore through every corner of the house. We were grieving, yes, but it wasn't the quiet, tear-streaked mourning people expected. It was a violent, restless kind of sorrow, one that twisted into anger when we least expected it. Dad would sit at the kitchen table for hours, staring at nothing, then slam his fist down so hard the plates rattled. One minute he was sobbing, guilt pouring out of him like an open wound. The next he was spitting words full of bitterness and rage. At himself, at her, at the world. The rest of us weren't much better. Layla couldn't stop snapping at everyone, her voice shaking with a fury she didn't know how to tame. Logan stayed silent, but the coldness in his eyes said enough. Even I found myself boiling over at small things. A creaking floorboard, a misplaced cup, anything to distract from the gaping hole her absence had left behind. It felt wrong to be so furious at someone we had just lost, but grief doesn't follow polite rules. It mutates. It latches onto everything you don't say. We didn't just miss her. We were betrayed by her choice, abandoned when we needed her most. And even though the anger scorched us from the inside out, we clung to it because sometimes fury was easier to bear than heartbreak. A year later, the wounds are still there, not raw anymore, but deep, stitched together with shaky hands and silent promises. We aren't the same people we used to be. There's a heaviness to us now, a quiet understanding that life can shatter without warning. That love doesn't always save you. Dad carries it in his eyes, in a way he moves through the house like a man twice his age. Layla has it too. A brittle edge to her laughter that wasn't there before. Logan keeps most of it hidden, buried somewhere we can't reach, but sometimes I catch it in the way he flinches at sudden sounds. And me? I feel it every time the house falls too quiet, every time I remember that not all storms come with rain. But despite everything, we're still here. We're still standing. We wake up each day and face the brokenness, not because we've healed, but because we refuse to let the past be the end of our story. There are good days now, days when we find pieces of the old warmth, a shared joke, a sunset watched in silence, a meal cooked together without falling apart. It's not the life we imagined. It's messy, harder, but it's real. We've learned that survival isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about carrying it with you, about choosing to move forward even when it hurts. Because in the end, that's what love, true love, demands. Life rarely unfolds the way we plan, and sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the deepest. This story reminds us that pain, betrayal, and loss are part of the human experience, but so is resilience. In today's world, where everything feels rushed and fragile, it's important to face heartbreak with honesty, to allow grief its space, and to rebuild, even if it's slow and messy. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the past with courage. Choose compassion, even when it's hard. Choose forgiveness, even when it feels impossible. And above all, keep moving forward.